Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome back to the Regional Committee, to this, the third day, which will focus on governance matters. I'm going to ask if we can put up the revamped... Do you hear us online? I can see some people pointing to... Can you hear me, Bjorn? Yeah. You do, great. Okay, I'll proceed. Provisional programme for today. We've had the private meeting, which you'll hear about shortly, that has taken place. We're now at the 10 a.m. CET slot, so we're going to hear shortly about WHO's programme budget and sustainable financing. We'll be moving on to delivering a fit-for-purpose WHO Europe for country impact straight after that session. We'll then go to a lunch break where we'll, after the lunch break, catch up on the remaining interventions on the EPW monitoring implementation framework. We'll then move to accreditation of regional state actors, matters arising, where we'll be inviting Bjorn to take the floor, and progress reports. We then have a 3:30 to 4 o'clock session on confirmation of dates and places of regular sessions of the Regional Committee, other matters, and closure of the session. So we thank you very much for adapting with us through these 3 days. We have had to chop and change a few things. Such was the richness of the interventions and the interest to take part. So we thank you very much for that. And with that, I will hand back to our Executive President.
Thank you, Rob, and good morning from my side also to everyone. And as you heard, we have quite strict timetable here. I really want you and encourage you to then involve and do your comments here during the day, but please respect the timelines we have agreed on in our special rules of procedures. So let's have a good day also today. For those of you in the Zoom platform and on the public broadcast, you are joining us now for the public session. Welcome back for our third and last day on our plenary session of RC71, which will be focused on governing matters and governance matters. This morning, the members of Regional Committee convened in a private session in which deliberations took place around nominations and elections for seats becoming vacant in WHO governing bodies and committees. I will now announce the outcome of that session, and after that, I propose we together then congratulate all the elected countries and persons. For the Executive Board, where two seats will become vacant in May 2022, when the terms of office of Austria and Tajikistan will expire, the Regional Committee agreed to propose the candidatures of the following two countries on the 75th World Health Assembly in May 2022: Republic of Moldova and Slovakia. For the Standing Committee of the Regional Committee, where 4 seats will become vacant at the end of this session of the Regional Committee, when the terms of office of the members designated by Croatia, Poland, Republic of Moldova and Russian Federation will expire, following 4 members were elected, each with a 3-year term of office: France, Montenegro, Spain, Turkmenistan. Finally, for the Policy and Coordination Committee of the Special Programme of Research, Development and Research Training in Human Reproduction, where 1 seat becomes vacant in 1st January 2022, the following country was elected for a 3-year term of office: Italy. Congratulations, and I propose a warm applause for all those who were elected. Let us then come to agenda item 9, WHO budget and sustainable financing. This session links very well with the session we started yesterday afternoon on the EPW measurement framework, as well as with the session that will be next, Fit for Purpose WHO Europe. You can see on the screen the relevant documents of this agenda item. First, we will hear from Rob Butler, Executive Director, Regional Directors Division, about the regional perspective of the Programme Budget 2022 till 2034 that was approved at the last World Health Assembly in May. Then we will hear from Mr. Björn Kummel from Germany and Chair of the Working Group on Sustainable Financing, who will reflect on the work of the working group to date and on the 5 questions that have been circulated by the Global Working Group to help clarify Member States' position on options to improve the financial situation of WHO. Next, I will invite the acting chairperson of the 28th Standing Committee, Ambassador Ms. Nora Cronic-Romero, to introduce the draft resolution that the Regional Committee will be invited to consider at the end of the discussion. In order to allow sufficient time for discussion, we will combine all your comments and interventions after these 3 short introductions into one single discussion round. For the discussion, I also welcome Imre Hollo, Director of Strategic Planning and Budget, WHO Headquarters Geneva, who will be available for answering any questions and reflecting on both topics. But first, Mr. Butler, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I also extend thanks in advance to Nora and to Björn, who have really been ever-present supporters of our regional office. Very grateful that you could join us for this session today, along with Mr. Hollo Director Hollo from headquarters. Thank you very much, Imre, for joining us. 2 others that I'd like to note that are in the auditorium supporting me with this session. I have to my right here Director for Business Operations, Mr. David Allen. I also have our lead on resource mobilization, sustainable financing, Mr. Pierre Rocca, who are joining me, and I thank them in advance as well. So in the spirit of EPW, we really see programme budget as meaning not solely a financial framework, but really the framework through which we deliver our programme, the framework through which we deliver the European programme of work over the next biennium. The regional plan for implementation that we've received, and that you've received, that is linked to this session, really unpacks, it articulates that plan. If you like, it's our contract with you and our invitation to you to hold us accountable, not on our spending, but on our programme delivery. And that's an important shift that we're making under the European Programme of Work. So, if we could go back a slide, please. So, what we've done is looked at the way in which we prepared our programme budget for the next biennium through the Regional Plan for Implementation, the RPI. We've looked at, of course, being very country-driven. We've not strayed away from the European Programme of Work. The cornerstone items, the flagship items of the European Programme of Work, the principles of the European Programme of Work. We've stood by those principles, and the European Programme of Work, of course, which you endorsed just 12 months ago, we've focused on packaging that European Programme of Work delivery over this biennium. But we've also taken the lessons learned from the programme budget implementation over the biennium in which we are in today. So we've realized and we've built this agility to not just respond to COVID-19, but to really ramp up our support to our country, and really learn to live in a new virtual environment, exposing not some new threats necessarily, but having to deal with new challenges. And that agility has really paid off. We've also built and endeavored to build a fit-for-purpose WHO Europe. And that's something that we'll hear about in the next session a little bit more, but the way in which we've repurposed our entire staffing to respond to the pandemic, the structural alignment that's taken place, the country presence review that we'll hear about shortly from Dr. Gundo Weiler, have really, I hope, been felt in the countries, and it's something that we'd like to build on in the biennium ahead as we implement Programme Budget 22-23. Also, during this past biennium, we've had to, let me say, find a way to become a leaner organization. We have less divisions, we have fewer directors, fewer divisions, and with that also a more leaner and less top-heavy organization. Now that, of course, is due to the shortfalls, the financial shortfalls that we inherited at the regional office, but it's also due to the fact that we have historical unequal programmatic funding across the House and a very narrow funding base, particularly around voluntary contributions, which I'm going to speak to shortly. We're also very happy to have been able to develop and to really bring to the forefront new work streams. And here, notably, the work around schools and also around mental health have been areas of work where we've really found ourselves building up a core capacity and with some real potential to deliver to your expectations over the biennium ahead. And also some notable partnerships that have been forged. And I would say here, you know, as an example of this would be the European Commission's Eastern Neighbourhood of the Region partnership, which equates to over $100 million of support over this past 18 months. So this is a busy slide. It has to be a busy slide because what we've tried to do is capture the regional plan for implementation on it. You need to acknowledge, of course, that this is the first biennium through which we will deliver the European Programme of Work and for which we've been able to plan for the European Programme of Work. Here, what we've done is look at the big ticket items, and we've segmented those big ticket items by our core priorities. I'm not going to unpack this right now. It is all in the regional plan for implementation, which you have as a working document to this session. We heard around some points on these items yesterday on the Mental Health Coalition from Natasha, from Siddhartha on the European Immunisation Agenda 2030, from Dorrit the day before on our work on health emergencies. The regional director has referred to healthy behaviours, incorporating behavioural and cultural insights. And of course, the Monti Commission spoke very strongly towards this operationalising of One Health. We also heard, of course, from Natasha, Melita and others around reimagining the future of primary healthcare. So this is our first biennium. We will be coming back to RC72 with an adaptation of this regional plan for implementation. And we're doing that because, as you're aware, the budget that was approved by the World Health Assembly this year will be revised, reviewed and revised, and potentially in the discussion at the next World Health Assembly. So we will adapt with those changes and come back to you in September next year with an adaptation of this. This is how we see our biennium plan as we stand today. And the key box at the bottom here, of course, are the enablers, which have not featured previously on other slides, but which will be unpacked for us in the next session. Is it a busy slide? Yes. Is it an ambitious agenda? Yes. Do we have the funding in place to match this agenda right now? The answer is no. So here, with the next slide, I'm going to explain or unpack that. So as you'll be aware, a $6.1 billion budget was approved at WHA 74, of which 7% was assigned to the Euro region. That equates to $320.5 million. You'll see here on the bar on the far right. As I say, that is subject to change at the World Health Assembly in 75. World Health Assembly 75. That also represents an increase from our 2020-2021 budget of approximately 15%, which is commensurate with the increase for the budget globally. Now, if we look at that right-hand column, the point I've just made on the previous slide will become apparent. We have a budget or space of 320.5 million. At this point, we have voluntary contributions secured to the tune of 95 million and our AC, or corporate flexible resources, secured to the tune of 101 million. What this means is that we have a gap and 125 million yet to be raised. That represents about 39% of our budget. So our ambitious agenda is yet to be matched by resources. This, of course, is problematic. This is how that budget is allocated across this is our base program budget by outcome, outcomes 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to unpack this in the next few slides, but just to give you an indication of where this money is assigned, as you'll see, the green is SP1, the dark blue at the bottom right is SP2, health emergencies, SP3 on health and well-being is in light blue here, and our more effective and efficient WHO and our enabling services are in yellow. So sustainable financing is very important for all of us in the room, but it should be of importance to all of you as well. This is a slide you've seen a number of times. It basically depicts how the WHO-approved budget has quadrupled over the last 3 decades, how our voluntary contributions have strived to keep up with that approved budget, but how our assessed contributions have remained stable at about $1 billion US. This has an implication at a regional level. And I'm just going to stay on this slide for a couple of minutes so that we can digest what we're seeing here. So if we look at 2020-2021, which is the second bar from the right, we can see that our budget was fully financed. We've had a high voluntary contribution dependency in this last year. About 65% of our budget was reliant on voluntary contributions. Some of that is thematic flexible in nature, and some of that is specified, tied, earmarked. As you can see from the far right column, that's the 39% at the top there, the orange I was referring to. That is our current funding gap. That we need to basically turn light blue. We need that to become flexible, because it's got to be voluntary in nature, because our assessed contributions are stable. The corporate flexible funds, here depicted in green, are stable. They will not increase. But what we have in our means to change is the orange sector. We hope that that turns light blue or dark blue, but preferably light blue, and that we're fully funded, of course, through this upcoming biennium. That's the challenge, and that has very real implications at a regional level. Those implications are that our voluntary contributions are largely specified or earmarked, which means that we have pockets of poverty still across the house. We've had them historically, and we would really like to address this in the coming biennia. Here you'll see an overfunding of 1.1. This is our distribution and type of funding by GPW 13 outcome, an overfunding of 1.1. And of course, across 1.2, 1.3, notably 2.2, 3.3, we see a real dearth of funding. So this is an issue for our regional office and something that we'd like to address through this sustainable financing call to the member states. We have additional issues in our region related to voluntary contributions. The top 5 voluntary contributors in our region account for 77% of the financing. So this is a very slim foundation on which our voluntary contributions are based. And I'd really like to applaud, we all would like to applaud in the room today, the contributions of Germany, the European Union, United States of America, the Gavi Alliance, and of course the Russian Federation as those top 5, but others that are listed here. We thank you all. We hope others will move in your direction, particularly in terms of the thematic flexible financing that you've afforded us over this biennium that has allowed us some area or some ability to be flexible with those finances. So what have we been doing? Well, sustainable financing and the work around resource mobilization has been amplified significantly over this last biennial, over this last 18 months. We've needed to really shape up. We've boosted our resource mobilization capacity. We've been supported by an SCRC working group, which has done terrific work around sustainable financing. And here I'd not only thank Ambassador Kronig Romero, but all member states that are taking part in that SCRC working group, whom we'll hear from shortly. And I'm very happy to say that this has made our regional committee agenda and will likely make our regional committee agenda in future years. A resource mobilization strategy and investment case has been developed, formulated. We are then going to take that investment case down to a country level and boost the capacity of our countries to raise resources and to find investment for the programs that are most in need and that where you have identified your priorities need to be matched. So we're really enhancing that country office support. We'll be establishing new positions and a small enabling hub in Istanbul to support particularly those countries in the eastern part of our region. And then, of course, seeking new contributors and funding opportunities. And if you can all acknowledge sort of some of the challenges that I've put across to you today, you'll probably appreciate that we're spending too much time on resource mobilization and not enough time on delivery. And this will threaten our delivery of EPW. A lot of fundraising work going into the last 18 months particularly. So of course, in closing, I'd like to again thank the Global Working Group on Sustainable Financing. We will endeavor to do our absolute bottom level best to support the work that you, the Chair, Björn Kummel, and the working group are undertaking, of course, with the support of the SCRC Working Group on Sustainable Financing under the leadership of Switzerland, under the chairmanship of Switzerland. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll hand the floor back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Your presentation provides a nice bridge to the next topic of sustainable financing. And it's my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Björn Kummel, Chair of the Working Group of Sustainable Financing. We are very proud of you having that chairperson position there and thankful for your excellent job, what you are doing as a chair there, and you have all our support. So, Mr. Kummel, please.
So thank you, Päivi, and thank you, the regional office, honorable ministers, RD Hans. So first of all, as Päivi was just saying, I'm addressing you not in my capacity as a German representative, but in my capacity as the chair of the WHO Working Group on Sustainable Financing. And in that capacity, obviously, it's a major honor and pleasure for me to be addressing you in the next few minutes. So I will hold a statement that I'm holding more or less the same one that I already held in the African Regional Committee as well as in the CEARO Regional Committee, and I will be doing the same again in the next upcoming regional committees. So I'm practically addressing all regional committees. So the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the importance of WHO and that the world needs WHO now more than ever. All COVID lessons learned panels clarify two things. First, a strong and capable WHO is key to implement the health-related sustainable development goals. And second, no global health security without a strong and truly enabled WHO. At the same time, the current crisis has also brought forth a major gap in between our expectations vis-a-vis and WHO's ability and capacities. There's a discrepancy between the world's expectation vis-a-vis WHO and WHO's de facto's abilities, capacities. Or in my words, there is a major discrepancy between member states praising the relevance of the WHO and their willingness to pay for this. DG Tedros clarified in his opening remarks to you that currently WHO's program budget is more than 84% driven by individual donors. and only 16% of the funding is truly predictable, coming through the membership fee. This situation has been a long-term challenge for the WHO, but it has reached now a point that seems hardly acceptable. This was the reason why the World Health Assembly called on member states in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic to provide sustainable funding to WHO to ensure that the organization can respond fully to public health needs. Subsequently, the working group that I'm sharing was established by the board in order to enable the WHO to have the robust structures and capacities needed to fulfill its core functions as defined in the Constitution. All independent panels, including the Independent Panel for Pandemic Preparedness and Response under the leadership of President Sirleaf and Clark, and the Pan-European Commission under the leadership of Mario Monti, share the same assessment. WHO's financing is fundamentally rotten. This assessment is not new. It might sound shocking, but it's not new at all. There have been several attempts in the past to fix it, yet no major improvement have happened within the past 30 years. So what are the consequences of the current way of financing of WHO? Since donors provide about 84% of the resources, and since only those activities get done which are funded, it is de facto the donors who set the priorities of our organization and not the member states. And it seems that donors value WHO much more than its 194 member states, which so far, at least together through their membership fee, do not want to provide more funding than 16%. It's clear that managing over 2,000 awards with different reporting requirements, constant fundraising activities, all this diverts attention and resources away from the technical work that is needed in headquarters, regional office, and country offices. There's a heavy donor reliance, and Rob has just alluded to that. I think it's our region, the Euro region is one of the heaviest reliant on very few donors. And that means reduced predictability, both for programs and for attracting talent. WHO's responsiveness to act or react to new events and emerging threats is seriously limited. Priority areas apart from pandemic preparedness, such as NCDs or health systems, continue to be chronically underfunded. And this has major negative implications for WHO's work, obviously also in the regions and at country level. With current financing mix, WHO is de facto unable to put the money to the needs, but also to put the right staffing to the right destinations. My working group has met already 3 times and will be meeting again end of next week. Well, actually in 2 weeks at the end of September. The first 2 working sessions looked at the historic context, the underlying issues related to WHO's reliance on voluntary contributions and different options how to move ahead. The third session specifically looked at the recommendation of the Independent Panel for Pandemic Preparedness and Response, including a proposal to increase the assessed contributions to 2/3 of the base segment of the WHO, of the program budget, which is the base segment is practically the core mandate of WHO, which currently has a budget volume of roughly 3.9 billion. What would this mean if we followed the proposal of the IPPPR? It would mean practically a tripling of the membership fee of WHO for all of us. So what we are currently providing through our assessed contributions would have to be tripled. The discussions in my working group have been cautious and very difficult, but this is not business as usual. We are in historic times, making historic decisions, and some of us call this the Bretton Woods moment for global health. The additional investments we are discussing for WHO are peanuts compared to the trillions spent and clearly make a compelling return on investment. And that is clear from practically all independent experts share this assessment. We have to be clear about 2 things. First, this is now or never. If in the wake of the largest global health crisis or the global crisis since many decades, we are unable to fundamentally fix the historic challenge of WHO's financing, we might not get a second chance. DG Terros clarified in his address to you, to all Euro member states that we have a historic opportunity to put WHO's finances back on track. Second, if we are not finding a consensus for a concrete proposal to fix this historic challenge, then this is also a decision we are taking. And that must be crystal clear to all of us. This would then be the decision that we are keeping the status quo, which keeps WHO vulnerable and limits its ability to help member states preventing the next crisis and implementing the health-related sustainable development goals. Or even worse, the world does not wait for our boldness and our consensus. If we are unable to truly enable the truly inclusive multilateral organization for global health, the WHO, with the needed resources, the world will create other capable actors who might be less inclusive and transparent and mandate them for important tasks in global health security. And discussions are already happening in this regard outside the governance sphere of the WHO. And the WHO discussions could easily be overtaken by facts created through parallel channels. So it lies in our hands whether we are in consensus moving beyond our comfort level and truly enable the WHO, or whether we stick to the status quo and will have to watch how WHO's role will diminish over time as other actors will grow financially, but also with regards to their mandates. So in all the other regional committees, I would now give the floor to my vice chair in the bureau, because we have vice chairs from each region. But since I am practically the representative of the Euro region in the bureau of this working group, I will now very briefly present the 5 questions that the working group has transmitted to the member states of the regional committee, because we are seeking your feedback on these 5 questions. And I will do that very quickly. So the first question is, do the member states share the view that the WHO's base segment, the core mandate of WHO, of the program budget should be at least 50% funded by assessed contributions in order to ensure integrity and safeguard the independence of WHO? Second question, do the member states share the view of the Independent Panel for Pandemic Preparedness and Response that the entire base budget should be fully funded by unearmarked flexible resources? Third question, would member states support the 75th World Health Assembly, which is the next one in May, agreeing on the way forward for an assessed contribution increase and adopting an incremental implementation schedule? Fourth, do the member states agree to explore the IPPPR recommendation for a replenishment model to cover the remaining part of the base segment of the program budget, both by member states and non-state actors? And the fifth question, what are the best practices and lessons learned for prioritization in the regions? And since we are the 3rd regional committee to take place, I can more or less just give you a brief feedback that on all these questions, we received great support from the African region and the Sahara region. So they are very supportive and practically also highlighted that they are willing to discuss such an AC increase, that they are willing, also looking positively at the flexible contributions, but also in favor of an incremental increase and support a replenishment model. With that, thank you very much and sorry for taking such a long time.
Thank you, Björn. Happy to hear that you are proceeding with those discussions and that there are willingness then to really take seriously this moment, the window of opportunity of this moment, but also to increase the contributions, flexible and non-earmarked ones. Let me now turn to Ambassador Ms. Nora Kronig-Romero from Switzerland, acting chair of the 28th Standing Committee, to briefly present the related draft resolutions that was developed by the SCRC subgroup on WHO Europe's financing, with the full support and endorsement of the Standing Committee. And knowing, my dear colleague Nora, that You have chaired a very challenging negotiations both at the SCRC and also according this resolution. I think that you are well prepared for your new parenthood, and congratulations also for that. So Ms. Chronic Romero, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Päivi. Madame.
Thank you very much, Päivi. Madam President, Regional Director, dear delegates, it seems clear from the two interventions we've just heard that the sustainable funding of the WHO has become an important area for work. This is a field in which the Standing Committee has decided to create this working group on sustainable financing, which I preside over. Our group has met 5 years over the year, despite the current circumstances, as has been mentioned. We had an open sitting as well, open to all member states. We carried out detailed analysis of WHO Euro so that we could identify measures to be taken to make funding more sustainable. Our work has been closely linked to the Global Working Group on Sustainable Financing to ensure that regional efforts could be integrated into the global process. Therefore, I'd like to thank Björn Kummel, who just spoke, as in his capacity as chair of that Global Working Group. We're very grateful that he's come to this regional meeting today. The main result of the work of our subgroup has been this draft resolution on sustainable financing. On behalf of all of the members, Bulgaria, Croatia, Kazakhstan, Norway, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, we'd like to communicate to all members of the region that this resolution was then adopted. The interpreter regrets the poor sound quality of the original. I'd also like to underline one element that I think is particularly important, the fact that member states have an active role in this proposal, and they did have all along. This shows how we as member states need to work together in a committed way to find solutions to this problem. I think Björn underlined this clearly, that we have the keys here to make progress on this historic issue. The resolution acknowledges the WHO's historic role and the efforts that have been made to find solutions to this problem. We talk about sustainable funding and the fact that there are 3 points here. We need coordinated action from these 3 points. We need to find ways which allow us to tackle the challenges in terms of the funding of this organization, including increases of assessed contributions. This should be based on what countries can manage, as well as greater flexibility in the use of resources. The project asks WHO Euro to continue working on this, how resources are used to improve transparency and funding management. So it is now my pleasure as President of the Standing Committee to present you with this draft resolution for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. We will come back to the draft resolution after our discussion, which I am pleased to open now. We have a pre-established speakers list of member states here, and the first is Slovenia on behalf of the EU and its member states, followed by Turkey and Finland. So Slovenia, floor is yours.
Madam Chair, I do believe there was a mistake there. Slovenia no longer wishes to make the statement on behalf of the EU and its member states. Thank you.
Okay. Then we go directly to Turkey, followed by Finland and Russian Federation. So Turkey, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President, distinguished regional director and delegates. Firstly, we would like to thank Regional Office for the comprehensive regional plan for implementation and other related documents. We all know very well the impeding effects of the vicious cycle of insufficient sustainable financing and overdependence of VCs for WHO to reach its highest potential, which causes the insufficient financing in the end again. As a country that always advocates stronger WHO, Turkey has been a supporter of the process to better finance WHO since the beginning. It's pleasing to see that the discussions of the working group are already yielding concrete outputs. In this regard, we look forward to seeing the results of deep dive consultations and final report of the working group. The summary of answers supplied by the member states of our region presents us an important picture. Although member states support increase in ACs, increased accountability, efficiency, and transparency underpin this increase. Above all, we need to be convinced that this increase will have impacts at country level. In this sense, we welcome the Secretariat's efforts towards ensuring the transparency with redesigned results reports, balanced scorecards, and triple billion showcase. However, these reports should be designed to give good capture of the situation, not to overwhelm countries with complicated details. As Turkey, we have always believed that Regional Office for Europe has been the locomotive region of WHO. Although our region has its share from the newly approved budget as the second least budget, good and efficient governance would help bridging this gap. Of course, this is a collaborative process and not independent from the impact at the country level. Considering the backbone of the EPW is putting countries at the center, the linkage between country presence and sustainable financing should be strengthened. We should continue region-wide consultations to ensure the best use of our resources, budget, and how to turn what we have on our hands into country impact at the highest possible level. With this in mind, Turkey supports the relevant draft resolution, which we believe to serve for exploring new types of working and funding to get a sustainable financing for WHO. Thank you.
Thank you, Turkey. And next, I give the floor to Finland, followed by Russian Federation and Switzerland. Finland, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Executive President, Regional Director, Executive Director, and delegates. Finland would like to thank the Secretariat for the Program Budget 22-23 Regional Plan for Implementation and for the reports on sustainable financing. We also thank the Chair of the Working Group on Sustainable Financing and the Chair of the SCRC Subgroup on Sustainable Financing for their work. The budget plan is a rich document and we are still studying it. We note several new initiatives under the different pillars of the European Programme of Work and look forward to learning more about them. However, we would like to underline the importance of good governance and proper procedures in this regard. New substantial initiatives should undergo a thorough dialogue with member states before introducing them as budget lines. The dependency of the next biennial budget's implementation on voluntary contributions remains concerning. It is part of the fundamental challenge in WHO's financing that we must urgently address. We support the adoption of the proposed resolution. Sustainable financing requires a sufficient level of assessed contributions. Finland shares the view of a need for a higher AC proportion in the budget. We are currently discussing our national position on the adequate level of the AC. It will be important to also discuss whether a cap is required for the proportion of the assessed contributions. Flexible voluntary contributions are also necessary. Finland can support the exploration of a potential replenishment model to cover parts of the program budget. Such exploration should entail a detailed assessment on the benefits and risks, as well as costs or requirements of such model, and take into account the unique role of WHO as a normative UN organization on global health. We remain committed to working through the Sustainable Financing Working Group including in light of the discussions at the Working Group on Preparedness and Response. And finally, we welcome the clear focus in the budget plan on ensuring staff well-being through a healthy, respectful, and motivational workplace, including the implementation of the WHO policy on preventing and addressing abusive conduct. Thank you.
Next, Russian Federation, followed by Switzerland and Norway. Russian Federation, floor is yours.
Distinguished Chairperson, distinguished colleagues, distinguished Regional Director, the issue of sustainable financing of the WHO is, of course, one that requires separate and very close attention. Before the organization, there are a number of new challenges which are becoming ever more complex and require additional efforts and decisions. An example for the European region is, of course, the European Programme of Work, which has a number of tasks within it, which require, of course, operational decisions to be made. The program focuses on partnerships specifically and resources, and this is a very key issue from the point of view of sharing and allocating resources. We note the effective work that has taken place within the framework of the Sustainable Financing Working Group of the Euro region of WHO, and also support the global Sustainable Financing Working Group and the outcome from that. We think that the conclusions need to be studied very thoroughly. We support the resolution that has been tabled, and we thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, I give the floor to Switzerland, followed by Norway and Sweden. Switzerland, please.
Sehr geehrte Frau Präsidentin,
Madam President, Regional Director, distinguished delegates, if the crisis has made anything clear, it's the fact that the status quo of the funding of the WHO cannot continue. The organization needs to meet its expectations. Therefore, sustainable financing is a top priority. In particular, the WHO's mandate as the coordinator of pandemic preparedness and response must be able to be effectively implemented. As a result, resources are required. We should note the independence, and we should indeed strengthen this. The WHO must have the financial means required to carry out its mandate effectively. This goes hand in hand with sustainable financing, and we need to consider governance reforms too. The current reforms have a real impact on the regional activities of WHO Euro and on all of our countries. As a result, all of our regions, all of our member states need to work on this together. Switzerland's point of view is that an increase of assessed contributions along with other contributions should be considered. We, in the medium term, can consider perhaps earmarked contributions. From the WHO side of things, we should look at how these funds are allocated. They should do so efficiently. We are aware that this will, for the organization and for the funders, be difficult, but Switzerland believes that the time is now, and we must make the most of this opportunity to improve funding of this organization. We are convinced that the WHO, if efficiency is increased, can continue to play a key role. Now is the time for us to invest in reforming this organization, particularly with regard to funding and preparedness before health crises. This will allow us to avoid terrible crises. We can do this by creating new institutions which protect the health of everyone. In discussions within the European region of the WHO, we will continue to tackle this topic in future because we will have to. The SCRC should continue to discuss this in detail in the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. to Norway for a regional statement, and followed by Sweden and UK, and then I have no other member state on the list yet. So Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Executive President. Thank you, Päivi. I make this statement on behalf of Sweden, Estonia, United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Norway. We would like to thank the Secretariat for their presentations and the documentation provided. We also thank the Chair and the Vice Chairs of the Working Group on Sustainable Financing for their leadership in efforts to enhance the sustainability of WHO financing. We welcome and support the draft resolution. We would also like to voice our concerns regarding the overall financing situation of the World Health Organization, which has significant implications also for the regional level. Over time, the number of tasks assigned to the Secretariat by the World Health Assembly have not been accompanied with a willingness to finance the work, whereas other priorities are overfunded with tightly earmarked contributions. Flexible voluntary contributions and multi-year commitments have been helpful in addressing this situation, and we urge Member States to keep increasing such contributions. Member States and the Secretariat should use all tools to pursue all avenues to improve sustainability. Our key challenge, however, as owners of this organization, is that only about 1/5 of the base budget is financed through assessed contribution. The pandemic has also shown that a strong and independent World Health Organization is essential to keep our world safe. We note recommendations to secure WHO's sustainable financing, including the call by the IPPPR to ensure that the entire base budget is comprised of flexible resources and 2/3 of the base budget being financed by assessed contributions. Increasing the assessed contributions is clearly the best way of ensuring both predictability and complete flexibility of funds. It would help to address the financing needs of all levels of the World Health Organization, including our own regional office. It would significantly lessen the need for the Secretariat to engage in fundraising activities and free up resources and enable the Secretariat to focus on implementing the tasks we, the Member States, assign to them. And perhaps most importantly, it would reinforce the democratic foundation of the World Health Organization and strengthen Member State ownership and governance. Assessed contributions, also being as they are based on the negotiations UN scale, reinforce the principle of Member States' ability to pay. Over time, the reliance of external donors has also led to a situation where Member States are not fully in charge of how funds to the organizations are allocated and utilized. For these reasons, this group of Member States is strongly in favor of a significant increase in assessed contribution. And if it will help Member States make a meaningful commitment, a plan for stepwise implementation of that increase. The need for increased financial sustainability is immediate. Financial sustainability, including through an increase in assessed contributions, would need to be accompanied by continued efforts led by the Headquarters Secretariat to ensure optimal use of resources, as well as strong governance, control, and integrity functions, and transparent and accountable result monitoring and reporting. Trust is key in achieving more flexible funding. We encourage the Headquarters Secretariat to develop a plan for how this could be achieved. We look forward to continuing our engagement with the Working Group on Sustainable Financing and recognize the important links to other ongoing reforms discussions. We encourage all member states of the European region to actively participate in the working group and to work for a strong message from the working group to the EB in January. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. There were questions about that are we going to have a different separate discussion about sustainable financing, but it was decided to merge the discussion for better time management. So if you would like to say something also about the sustainable financing, you didn't comment it yet there, so I encourage you to raise your hand. Otherwise, we will then continue to answering the questions you have raised and the comments then after closing this member states list, because I, in my information, haven't come any from international partners or non-state actors either. So now we have on our list next Sweden and followed by UK and Australia. So Sweden, your turn, please.
Thank you, Madam Executive President, Regional Director, Excellencies, dear colleagues. In addition to the regional statement delivered by Norway just now, Sweden would like to emphasize a few additional points. Achieving a long-term, fully financed WHO that can deliver on agreed priorities and is able to assist and support health system strengthening is important. This is also something that we and many other member states have said for a long time. However, the financial situation remains a cause of concern, and it is up to us as member states to walk the talk. Sweden welcomes efforts to better align the financial situation to the present reality. Member states, as owners of this organization, must ensure that financial resources are made available as agreed. In addition, as previously stated by many, assessed contributions do not cover more than 1/5 of the total budget, and it is apparent that the financial model needs to be changed in order to allow for a stepwise increase in assessed contributions to enhance long-term financial sustainability. We are especially concerned about the high degree of earmarked funding to the organization, which effectively means that the organization can't use available funds where they are most needed. Sweden is proud to provide a high level of flexible funding and encourages other member states to increase their levels of flexible funding as well. By doing so, we all allow the WHO to work more efficiently with the resources available. We need to review our collective financial commitments and to ensure that earmarking is kept to an absolute minimum in order to allow for our colleagues in headquarters and in the regional office to use funds to cover pockets of poverty and areas of greater need of resources. There is also a need to review the tools available to allow the organization to use external funding in a way which allows the Secretariat to be fully in charge of how funds to the organization are allocated and utilized in line with the priorities in the program budget, and for member states to be able to follow up the results and exercise accountability. Sweden looks forward to further discussions on how to achieve sustainable financing for WHO. We especially thank the member states responsible for the draft resolution on sustainable financing, which we fully support. Thank you.
Thank you, Sweden. And next on the list is UK and then Austria. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Executive Chair. Firstly, I'd like to align, the UK would like to align with the statement delivered by Norway on behalf of a group of member states. Firstly, I'd like to thank you, Rob, and the rest of the team for the work on the programme budget regional plan for implementation. We welcome the format of this new document and the way it clearly sets out the tangible results to be delivered. We recognise that this document is likely to evolve further, especially in this uncertain period, and look forward to engaging as it develops. Moving on to sustainable financing, The current WHO funding system is not working effectively, and this will inevitably impact WHO's efficiency and ability to deliver. That is why the UK supports the working group on sustainable financing and have been active in discussions so far. WHO needs more flexibility and predictability in its funding, and we as member states must match our funding to our rhetoric about the value we place on the organisation. The UK therefore supports a genuinely significant increase in assessed contributions as a first step. This is how we as member states demonstrate our commitment to our organisation. But this is not the only answer. We need to be more creative in finding solutions and want to explore a replenishment for WHO. We recognise it's not an obvious fit, but let's not let that stop us seeking a way to make it work, perhaps by focusing on a pillar or a quantifiable part of it. Realistically, any funding model for WHO will continue to be a mixed one, at least for the foreseeable future. That is why we must also continue to seek ways to increase the flexibility and predictability of our voluntary funding. The UK, as well as the largest provider of CVCs, will continue to advocate for this. Of course, these improvements in funding must also go hand in hand with continued reform of WHO, and we must ensure those links throughout. We welcome the questions directed to the Regional Committee. This has been a useful way to help the discussion, but it's important to go beyond these questions and have an open and inclusive dialogue and find practical solutions. This issue is central and affects us all and our organisation. It's been good to hear the views of others today, and we urge you all to take part in the working group discussions at the end of this month. We'd like to thank the working group chair and the Secretariat for making these discussions accessible to all. And finally, we'd like to call others to join us in supporting a significant increase in assessed contributions as part of a broader package of funding improvements linked to organisational reform work, and to agree a way forward at WHA 75. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. And the last on my list is Austria, so please, your turn to give and deliver your intervention, please. Do we have Austria there?
Thank you, Chair. We would like to take the floor to the second segment of this topic. Austria thanks the Regional Office for the informative document. The pandemic has demonstrated in a particularly dramatic way that changing the status quo of funding is an indispensable aspect of ensuring the integrity, independence, and capacity to act of WHO. We therefore welcome the working group's decision to move the discussion forward by submitting specific questions to the regional committees. However, we regret that only 38% of the European member states participated in the consultation process, and we encourage everyone to engage actively in the discussion. Only in this way can we arrive at a solution to this sensitive issue that all member states can support. We must not underestimate the complexity of the issue of sustainable finance. After all, if the intention is to finance at least 50% of the base budget through assessed contributions, a decision on this can only be taken after considering and clarifying other relevant questions and factors. For example, the strengthening of WHO's governance structures, the liquidity of states, the respective national requirements, mechanisms, and constraints on the provision of financial resources to international organizations, prioritization and deprioritization of WHO's various tasks according to available resources, the awareness raising regarding the cost implications of resolutions and decisions of the governing bodies, and the time frame envisaged for the implementation of any increase in ACs. In addition, it should be borne in mind that by defining the ECs as a certain percentage of the base budget an increase in the program budget every 2 years, as has regularly been the case to date, would always lead to an increase in ACs, an automatism that should not be disregarded. We think that the idea of the IPPPR to finance the entire base budget through non-earmarked flexible contributions is a desirable long-term goal. Finally, Austria suggests that when examining the use of the replenishment model, it is essential to consider how much of the base budget we can expect the model to cover realistically. Thank you.
Thank you, Austria. And Monaco has asked to deliver an intervention also. And then I have no other delegates on my list, but Monaco, your turn, please.
Je vous remercie, Madame
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. The Principality of Monaco is actively participating in the working group on sustainable financing. This is a question which is something that we've been thinking about for several years, and unfortunately we don't yet have a solution to this problem. It seems obvious that we're going to have to agree on a number of mechanisms, but as has just been said by Austria, this does raise a number of other issues, and in our view, an increase in the ACs is going to have to go through one of the major quagmires that we have, which is prioritizing activities, and we need to avoid setting up projects which are either outside of the WHO's mandate or on its margins, or that are a duplication of work that is ongoing in other programs, agencies, or organizations. So that also means that we will have predictability in the initiatives that will be launched by the Secretariat, or that we have to have it, and this for several years in the future. That also means that we would have better transparency and timing in terms of states contributing their ACs. So again, these are a number of issues that we need to frankly put on the table, that we need to be able to raise without it being a taboo. And if not, we're honestly going to be chasing our tails here and going in circles. We'll not get anything at the end, and we'll, just have these proposals and projects, but eventually we'll get to contributions that won't be given. So what we need to do is make sure that it does happen, and that there's trust in the organization, and that there is a revision of the accounts by the Secretariat, which will allow us to, as best possible, look at the outcome. We support the draft resolution that was tabled. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Monaco. We have now completed the speakers list, and as there have been a number of comments made and specific questions raised in the interventions, I will first ask Mr. Kummel if he wants to address any questions regarding to the working group. Then I will invite the Secretariat, respectively Mr. Imre Hollo and Mr. Butler, to respond to any questions raised with regards to the program budget for the next biennium and clarify any issues related to the sustainable financing. So, Mr. Kummel, first you, Björn, have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Päivi, and thanks for the rich comments. So I counted 9, which is, I think that shows that our region is absolutely active and engaged on this issue. I will run through the comments quickly. I'll do my best, and to leave everything else to the Secretariat, Imre, if I have missed anything. That's our usual habit, I guess. So Turkey, yes, indeed. I think sustainable financing is key. The focus on countries and region, this is not about headquarters. This is in particular enabling countries and regions. Finland, indeed, unique role of WHO needs to be respected. I think this is, I mean, one of the key reasons why we have this overall exercise is ensuring the integrity and role of the WHO. Maybe one thing that I could add is that last week we have started to have informal discussions with other agencies, actors who already have replenishment models, and we discussed with them, or I discussed with them in my capacity as a chair, whether it would be possible to learn from the experiences. So with the World Bank, Gavi, and the Global Fund, it was absolutely reassuring. They were impressed by the work that we are doing, and they very much support it. And at least, obviously, there are lots of challenges, but there are also lots of abilities, and I didn't see a major, an overall risk or challenge that we couldn't avoid. Russia, thanks a lot for the support of the working group, and indeed, whatever we will come up to at the end, namely to report to the EB in January, I think we need to be crystal clear about the recommendations and discuss them. Switzerland, I fully share your assessment. The status quo is just not acceptable, which is the starting point of our debate, and which we have to keep in mind when discussing any alternative way forward. Absolutely focus on transparency and governance. I think that is something that came also in other statements. To me, the two discussions of the working group on financing, but also the one on strengthening, are closely interlinked. And we will not achieve a substantive increase in AC if we are not, on the other side, also tremendously increase governance and oversight. But there are proposals on the table with regard to that in the working group on strengthening the WHO, chaired by the US and Indonesia. And they are very, very promising. And I think they also hit lots of the keywords that were coming in your statements. Obviously, it's key that everybody engages in the global debate. I think maybe one thing that I see as a challenge is the participation. While my working group is completely inclusive and everybody can participate, the participation is in the end limited to some very vocal ones, which is highly appreciated, but also a silent majority. But we need to also hear the voices of that silent majority, also from our region, to be honest. Yes, more flexibility with regards to voluntary contributions, and yes, the moment is now or never. We need to invest in our organization to reform it. The group statement held by Norway, completely reassuring and supports obviously concerns with regards to the overall financing model. Yes, we are the owners of this organization, but financially we only own, as a group, at least 16% of it. And I think that's a shocking reality. We have to make sure that we really own this organization, but that means we have to invest in it. Yes, increasing the ACs is one of the key ways forward. And I think this is why we have proposed this, or why we have raised this as a question. And we are very thankful for your feedback. Yes, we have to invent in order to reinforce the democratic foundation of WHO through potentially a significant increase in ACs. But this has to come hand in hand with governance control functions. Sweden, yes, and as many others, you're also an active participator in the working group. The financing model needs to be changed. You are also pointing your finger not only at the predictability problem, but also on the flexibility problem. To me, they go hand in hand. We obviously, we will not change the entirety if we're only fixing the flexibility, but the flexibility is a major improvement if we got it right. But predictability is also something that we should not leave out. And indeed, we have to address the pockets of poverty. UK, I love your statement, member states must match their funding with their rhetoric. This is exactly what the working group is all about. I think it's important to further advocate for CVCA. And you're right, we have to go beyond the questions that we raised. Indeed, I hear you, your plea for a significant increase in ACs. Austria, you're right, coming back to the participation, only so far 38% of Euro member states participated in the written inputs, but this is not the end of the story. my working group will meet the next time end of September, and there's still time to go. So obviously all member states, we would welcome to hear more responses, and I think it's needed because in the end you will have to invest in our organization altogether. Everyone should participate. Maybe one point with regards to what are there preconditions to make an AC increase happen. And I think that's my worry, to say, yes, there's a long list of things that need to happen before we are able to increase the ACs. And I would say then we will not see one in the end. That's practically, I think it needs to come hand in hand. We need to improve the governance. We need to improve the oversight. We have done that already within the last 10 years that I've been covering WHO. And I would say, and we also hear this from the independent panel, i.e. OAC, that practically when we are looking at other UN agencies with regards to transparency and accountability, WHO is top of the class. And that is not to say we shouldn't ask for more, but we shouldn't say this is a precondition in order to enter into a debate for AC increase. I think we have to increase the ACs alongside, obviously, further strengthening governance and oversight, which happens, but the proposals for that are out there. There's a quite interesting US proposal in the strengthening working group. How much of the base budget could be covered realistically through a replenishment? I don't know. I can't give you the answer. But it's interesting that when Gavi and Global Fund started with their replenishments, they heard the same question. And still they were able to get the positive feedback. Monaco, and I know I'm running over time, active participation, increase in ACs needs to be hand in hand with priority setting. And yes, that's also one learning exercise on my side. Member states do not like priority setting, at least not in a consensus. And sorry for taking so much time. Over to Imre or anybody else to follow up with any questions that I might have not answered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Björn. You don't have to apologize. You are in a serious situation there, and we all are there with you. So no apologies from your side. Thank you for your insightful and comprehensive comments here. And I really hope that you had time during the summer also to relax, because we need you to be fully concentrated then and energized then for the discussions that will follow after this. So all the support from us, I hope you feel it there. And then Mr. Holler, you have the floor next, please.
Thank you very much. My job is now very easy because Björn, with his tremendous energy, has covered basically all the important points. I just wanted to say that I really thank you, member states, for those who took the floor, for the strong support, for changing this situation and trying to fix WHO's financing. It is clear that this region is the key innovator and behind the whole process. And without the strong support from the European region, it will not happen. Even before, most of our flexible voluntary contribution CVC donors are from the European region. So the European region is really walking the talk and trying to lead by example to the other countries. I think I agree with Björn that we heard a couple of points that are sort of prerequisites for a potential AC increase: governance, transparency of allocation, prioritization, something to do with the automatic budget increase, etc. I think all these issues will have to be looked at parallel to all these discussions. I think it's very important that we tackle them, and but they're not stopping the work going ahead. And maybe Björn, I'm just looking at you that maybe at the next sustainable financing working group meeting we could have a look at some of these I don't know, prerequisites of some of these other elements that need to be tackled in order to get the AC increase. And particularly also there was a discussion about the transparency of the allocation of the flexible funds and how to make sure that more resources are left or allocated for the country offices. I think that's also something that requires our attention. And I also agree with the UK that we need to be able to think out of the box and be innovative and open for any changes. So with that, we'll listen to all the points and we will hope to be able to address them at the next Sustainable Financing Working Group meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Imre Hollo. And now I would like to give the floor to Regional Director for focusing more on our region then. Thank you. And please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Executive President and all colleagues. This is an incredibly important discussion, and thank you everyone for your input. Sustainable financing is indeed essential, and it cannot be approached as a merely financial and budgetary discussion. And I will be clear with you, if WHO continues to operate under the same financing model, the future of organization is endangered. And I think that's what Björn told very clearly as well. First, before going through the different points, I want to ensure you that whatever is put into the regional plan of implementation is in the RC70 approved EPW, European Programme of Work. So there is the full alignment. The lion's share of the regional office funds comes from a handful of partners. Only about a third of these contributions can be considered sustainable. Yes, the regional office is today in a much better financial situation than it has ever been in the recent past. I would also like to commend my team here and the collaboration between teams, particularly between David and his team, Rob and his team, and I hope that you enjoyed the slides, which we worked very hard on. Because for myself, it took years before I could understand a presentation of WHO on the budget. And maybe that's why when I came into office, it was such a big shock that I came with a deficit of $10 million and all the reserves were gone. So WHO Euro has to present in the simple, transparent terms to its governing body board what is the real situation. And that's what we're doing. We're serious about transparency. But as you have seen, the fact that the financial situation is better is largely due to a phenomenal lift on our side to increase resources during the pandemic and to the generosity of our friends who have come to the rescue. But the question is, how sustainable is this? Rob presented only 39% of the next BNN budget is basically financed, so for 2 years. I committed during my campaign, and I remember also very well our main donor, Germany, to whom I'm very grateful, right, for a clean balance sheet. But I also got to know, after less than 2 years, if I want to operate purely on a safe basis and clean balance sheet, I have to start let people go. As of today, we have a 20 million salary gap. This is the situation today. And I applaud all the working group and I applaud the commitments. But as a chief executive officer that you hold accountable, I am looking at the $20 million salary. And David was just whispering, this is before the country presence review. And many of you told we have to strengthen our country offices. So the lack of long-term, predictable, flexible funding is a threat, not tomorrow, but today. And most of the voluntary contributions remain earmarked, unpredictable, and short-term. It impacts our planning, our delivery, and down the line, it puts at risk our commitment to deliver impact. In the region, that means that without a change of our financing patterns, the implementation of the EPW and the regional plan for implementation we have just presented are at risk. So I hope you will appreciate that I'm placed in a very difficult position here, where you, as my regional committee, agree on ambitious targets for the organization, hold me accountable for delivery, while I can only count on really a few member states to provide the sustainable finance resources required. We have discussed at length how WHO should be reinforced and how important our mandate and work are. We have heard supportive statements from within, through our member states, and from outside of the organization, from partners, panels, and other committees. Today again, many member states have taken the floor to share their concerns regarding the WHO financing model and their commitment to change the situation. But basically, to ensure ongoing operations, I realize now that I have no other choice than to take some calculated risk. I had committed that I would be the regional director who, at the end of the BNM, does not have to go to the headquarters to ask for a bailout. And I'm very proud of all my staff and of the people who supported me. This is the first biennium, maybe since a decade, that we don't have to go for a bailout to the headquarters. But I cannot guarantee it. We will work very hard that this will be the same. And thank you to Imre. Imre is always very close with us and always very supportive. So thank you, Imre, and your team for reassuring us that we can continue to implement the EPW. WHO European member states are central actors of this discussion. Imre was also highlighting this, and this is true. Many already are walking the talk, so we should be positive. But more can and should be done immediately. I would like to commend the member states from the region which are allocating thematic and strategic engagement funds to WHO, and notably to our region. Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Finland, Luxembourg, Norway, and the European Union. These member states at varying levels contribute with more flexible funding, a very positive development towards more sustainable financing, and thank you so much. I also recognize Turkey, Switzerland, and the group represented by Norway, who ask us to ensure that any additional financing request is matched with evidence of higher efficiency of use of resources, a more country-focused implementation model for increased impact. I assure you, I am absolutely dedicated to this. There is no doubt about this. This is the core for me as the EPW, and I will always remain a field person. And I will continue to deliver clear results in both these priorities during the next biennium. I would also like to recognize the efforts deployed within WHO to adopt a fairer and more transparent approach to allocating resources among the major offices. I think you heard the percentage of 7% going to the region. And the establishment of the Resource Allocation Committee is a very positive development that I would like to salute. Before going further, I would like to give a reply now to the Russian Federation in the Russian language. Я хотел бы поблагодарить искренне Российскую Федерацию за решительную поддержку профилактики неинфекционных заболеваний.
I'd like to thank the Russian Federation for their support in terms of these kinds of diseases. That support will benefit the whole region and the whole world, indeed. With regard to innovative instruments and international and national reforms. With regard to capacity transfer between countries, very honestly, this support from Russia on all these problems, because it's important to note that 1 in 10 people die from one of these diseases in our region. Many countries say that this is not the case. But in fact, This leads to priority being given to different regions, for instance, Central Asia. As a result, I hope there will be continued support and it will be sufficient. Thank you very much, Dr. Vinovechvi and Dr. Jorge dos Santos. Thank you for your fantastic work. I would like to pass on my thanks to all of them. Thank you very much.
Through core voluntary contributions or thematic and strategic engagement funds, and to support an increase of assessed contributions and look at all possible ways to increase the share of sustainable financing available to the organization. The proposed resolution on sustainable financing is a step in the right direction, and I warmly thank the Working Group on Sustainable Financing for their commitment and support throughout the year. Finally, I want to thank Björn, you profusely, for your untiring efforts towards a sustainable, financed WHO. You have been the standard bearer, and we highly appreciate your leadership on behalf of WHO Euro. When you told that the financing model of WHO is rotten, I had to think. When I gave my TED talk, some people told Hans, you're quite explicit. After you told this, I understand I still have to learn from you, Björn. Lieber Björn, Sie sind ein echter Freund der WHO und unserer Region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director General, for your very clear message. We can now consider adoption of the proposed draft resolution contained in EUR/RC71/conf/doc/9 draft resolution on WHO's sustainable financing in the European region. Is the committee willing to adopt the proposed draft resolution by consensus? I see no objection, and I'm very pleased about that. The resolution is therefore adopted. Before we start the next item, as I told yesterday, I have learned that sitting can be very harmful. It can even kill you. So it's important that we do some exercise also. And I hand over to Executive Director Mr. Butler for some housekeeping message.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So we have Johanni back with us. The next session is entitled Fit for Purpose, a Fit for Purpose WHO Europe. So we're getting fit for the Fit for Purpose session. Johanni, floor is yours.
Rob, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's walk the talk one more time now with some physical activities, hopefully allowing that blood flows on those shoulders, neck, and upper back to increase and hopefully release some of the tension produced by prolonged sitting and at times poor posture. So would you kindly please, if you have your rubber band, yellowed, and we just fold it, please, in half. We place it over just behind our back. And now we just simply extend the arms based on your abilities. All right, keep your arms fully extended as shown here now. And from this position, we simply are going to shift side to side. Now, what happens if you don't have the elastic band? Then you pretend you have, and then you squeeze. Then you squeeze your hands and your arms and perform the same movement. The idea is to release some of the tension from the hips area in here. All right, legs, glute muscles, and lower back. For 5, for 4, for 3, for 2, and ladies and gentlemen, one more. Now, we remain with the arms fully extended and simply push our chest area forward, neck reclines, and then feel as the elastic band is pulling our arms closer together as we keep those arms fully extended. Shoulders, neck, upper back, chest area expanding, allowing more blood flow through those areas. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Arms remain as it is. And then please bring your neck to a upright position. And we just start shifting the neck side to side. Now, hoping to release some of the tension on those neck muscles for 5, for 4, for 3, for 2, and for 1. Would you kindly follow me on rotating the neck? Maintain a nice and lengthy breathing pattern. As we know, the movement is as relevant as the breathing pattern, providing enough oxygen combined with the movement, make that active break. Now, would you kindly please rotate on the opposite direction? And 1, 2, and 3. From this position, releasing the arms slowly. Elastic band now is right in front of us. Now, let's allow the glutes, lower back muscles to engage a little bit more by placing the elastic band on this position, right on the nice and firm. Place all your body weight on top of the elastic band. Now, from this position, just slight movement. Just based on your ability, all right? Make sure you remain safe here. And now keep your legs fully extended once again. If we don't have the elastic band, simply, this is the movement. Without the elastic band, just stimulating lower back, glute muscles, hamstrings for the next 10 seconds. Now we're going to start feeling the lower back. Keep those legs fully extended or locked. For 5, for 4, for 3, for 2, and for 1. We can just release the elastic slowly, placing our arms upright, fully extended, lacing or locking your fingers, and all the way up. Now, the idea behind this here is to stretch your couple wrists, forearms, tricep, shoulders, and upper back. For 5, for 4, for 3, for 2, and for 1. Now let's challenge our balance a little bit. Can we get on the tippy toes? Oh boy, I'm going to embarrass myself here. All right, and 5, 4, 3, 2. I drop my left. Can we continue with the right? And tilting. Deep inhale, long exhale. 1, 2, and 3. Both arms up. Now my right goes down and tilting to the right. Deep inhale, long exhale for 5, for 4, for 3, for 2, and for 1. Now, 90-degree angle and simply rotating. And now a little bit faster. Let's go. And 5, 4, 3, 2, stop, and opposite rotation, please. And 5, 4, 3, 2, up again. Bringing your palms together, ladies and gentlemen, active break. It's delightful to have you around here. Walking the talk on physical activity. And always, we remain united for a better health.